Hey guys, well, welcome to our Benjamin Franklin reading. And again, I really want to encourage you to be paying attention as we read the story. Okay, here we go. Electricity had recently been discovered by European scientists. Nobody knew very much about it, and most people looked on it as magic. Franklin happened to see some experiments in electricity, and he was so thrilled that he sent to London for glass tubes, which were called Leyden jars, friction discs, and other equipment necessary for experimenting. How many of you like to experiment? I would trust that while you're at home, you're doing some experimenting. After long practice, he became very skilled at making electricity. Wow. Young and old flocked around him to feel the shocks and see the electric sparks. It was no game to Franklin, but he could not help laughing when his visitors jumped into the air, their hair standing on end from an electric shock. How many of you have ever taken a balloon and rubbed it and then touched your hair with it? Well, I don't have that problem, but you know what I mean. For 6 years, he studied the nature of electricity. He began to wonder if lightning was not caused by electric charges in the clouds. At that time, it was believed that thunderstorms were earthquakes in the sky. But it struck Franklin that electric sparks and lightning looked the same, had the same strange smell, and acted in the same strange way. If lightning was electricity, he could save houses and churches from destruction by putting metal rods on the roof. The rods would lead the lightning safely away and carry it into the ground. But when Franklin talked about lightning rods, ignorant people, they came against him. They didn't like that idea. God made earthquakes in the sky to show that he was angry, and it was not fun for man to interfere with God's will. That's what some of the people thought. Well, Franklin, he quietly set about to prove that lightning was in fact electricity. What was lightning? Electricity. On a sultry summer day, when black thunderclouds were gathering overhead, he took his son along as a helper. He walked to a shed in an outlying field and sent the kite into the clouds. The kite was like those he had played with as a child, except that it was made of strong silk and had a thin, pointed rod fastened to its top. The string was of hemp, but the bottom part, which he held inside the shed to keep it dry, was made out of silk. Where silk and hemp joined, he fastened an iron key. Nothing happened until it started to rain and the hemp became wet. Suddenly he saw the strands of hemp standing up like the hair on a man who had an electric shock. When Franklin touched the key with his knuckle, he felt an electric shock. He quickly called to his son to hold the Leyden jar up to the sky. And the electricity from the clouds poured down the string and charged the jar. Franklin proved to the world that lightning was in fact electricity. But it was a piece of luck that his kite experiment didn't kill him. Now lightning rods were put up all over the civilized world, and as lightning flashes across the sky, so Benjamin Franklin's fame flew across the world. English, French, and German scientists showered honors upon the great inventor, and his fellow Americans were very proud of him. He was made honorary doctor of laws. Excuse me while I drink. Well, modestly, he continued his simple, useful life as a good citizen, and the people of Pennsylvania needed him badly. They asked him to go to England to persuade the king's ministers that Pennsylvania should be allowed to vote her own taxes. For Pennsylvania could not flourish without taxes, even that owned by William Penn's descendants in England. Franklin set off with his son as his only companion. Who was his only companion? His son. His wife and his daughter would not come, for they were afraid of the dangers of the sea. But he loved the sea and was never idle, even on shipboard. He studied the Gulf Stream, he studied the whales, he studied the birds, and sometimes when the ship was lying becalmed, he scared his fellow travelers by jumping overboard for a swim around the boat. One day he noticed that the sea became calm when the cook threw a pail of oily water over the rail. Nothing escaped Benjamin Franklin. When he arrived in England, the English thought the best was not too good for the famous Dr. Franklin. They flattered him and they feasted him, and lords and common people alike listened to his wisdom and his funny jokes. This meant a great deal at the time when the English were likely to treat all Americans as younger brothers with no rights, and they didn't have much sense either. Even the king's ministers lent an ear to his pleas. It was not easy to get yes for an answer, but Franklin was patient. Constantly, he presented Pennsylvania's problems and acted as unofficial ambassador for all the colonies. It was more than 5 years before he sailed home. His townspeople crowded around him to hear his serious talks and to laugh at his funny adventures abroad. He told how one day he was strolling around a little pond with a group of important men, and one of them began to regret that the days of miracles were past. Franklin said he could perform a miracle. He would still the waves of the pond. In other words, boys and girls, he would make the water calm. Turning his back to the group, he went to the water's edge and waved his stick like a wand over the rippling waves. And lo and behold, in a moment, the water became smooth as a mirror. Franklin laughed to himself. He had filled his hollow walking stick with oil and sprinkled it over the water. So when you sprinkle oil on top of the water, it makes it smooth. Franklin never missed a trick, and he learned this one from the cook on the ship. But soon no American felt like laughing any longer. Anger and resentment against the mother country were growing among the colonists. England wanted their money but refused to grant them the full rights as citizens. She put higher and higher taxes upon them. All right, guys, that's the end of our reading for today, and I trust that you saw some lessons. Again, Benjamin Franklin was a great man. What they said he couldn't do, he did it himself. He created schools. He created all kinds of things, not just electricity, but, well, he didn't create electricity, but he didn't just, discover it, so to speak, but he did all kinds of other things because he was a dreamer. And I want to encourage you, dream big. Don't ever let anyone tell you you can't do it, because you can. All right? I'll talk to you in a little while.